One silent handshake, one moment of hesitation, and behind it, a secret that will be revealed. For anyone who's ever wondered what actually goes down when power is pushed back by quiet strength, this story won't be easy to shake. Press play to listen. It started with a handshake, courteous, rehearsed, and insincere. No one in the room at that time had any idea what was going to unravel, except for the man who had witnessed too much to deny his gut. What ensues when trust is silently bartered for power? When comfort is preferred over courage by those who are supposed to lead? We've all felt it, that sting of being misled, the ache of promises broken not loudly but in silence. But sometimes the most powerful answer isn't anger. It's truth spoken gently, but without fear. This is the story of what happened when one man refused to stay quiet, and how, in the end, it wasn't just a bill or a betrayal, but something far deeper. That brought a nation back to life. Let me show you where. Senate Majority Leader John Thune believed he could sneak behind President Donald Trump's back, collaborating with liberal legislators while feigning to be a faithful friend. But Trump was not the kind to remain silent. In a single moment of force, on live TV, he inverted the entire political discourse. With a single sentence, he put Thune in his place and left both the press and Washington reeling. It all started with a handshake. That Monday morning, John Thune walked into the Oval Office with a soft smile. He warmly complimented President Trump's newest big, beautiful bill to repair the broken Medicaid system. But behind that warm smile, Thune was concealing something not so warm. Trump didn't have the full picture yet, but his instincts, honed from decades in the high-stakes worlds of New York real estate and Washington politics, told him something wasn't right. When Thune said, "We're with you, Mr. President," a strange silence followed. It felt off. Later that afternoon, a significant roadblock materialized. The Senate parliamentarian blocked Trump's central Medicaid proposal. Curiously, Thune, who was empowered to appeal the ruling, didn't move a muscle. The individuals in the room, Trump's close friends, searched about, perplexed. Why would Thune suddenly acquiesce? What none of them was aware of was this. Thune had been conducting clandestine meetings with liberal senators. Backstage, they were conspiring to sabotage Trump's entire agenda, while still feigning support for him in public. But Trump was not going to let that sort of betrayal go on. Not this time again. He just needed evidence. By 2 p.m., one of Trump's top intelligence aides, Eric, deposited a thin brown folder into the president's palms. Inside were call logs, leaked emails, and one incriminating photo. Thune, in a hushed Capitol backroom, shaking hands with 3 leading Democratic senators, the same ones who'd been battling Trump's bill in the press. Trump gazed at the photo, his tone steady. "I gave him a chance," he said. In the war room, Stephen Miller leaned in. "Do we go public?" "Not yet," Trump answered. "We go live." Later that night, Trump was to attend a primetime televised town hall, an opportunity to address the American people straight on. Thune would also be there, seated directly behind him during the Q&A. It was ideal. Trump started rehearsing, not for a typical speech, but for a moment that would rock Washington. A moment of truth. The clock ticked closer to 8 p.m. The room emptied, the lights flashed, and millions tuned in nationwide. President Donald J. Trump stepped on stage confidently, shook a few hands, smiled, and grabbed the mic. Grinning behind him sat Thune, unaware that it was all about to change. Trump started with his standard arguments: healthcare, commitments to the people. But then his tone took a darker turn. He gazed directly into the camera. "To those," he said, "who feign to support this bill while working behind the scenes with the other side to kill it, I know who you are." Audience members gasped. Thune shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Then Trump spun around a little and raised the brown folder. "John Thune," he said, "you were in that room last night with Democrats, shaking hands, cutting deals to thwart your own president's bill." The crowd went still. Cameras zoomed in close. Thune's face went white. "You broke the trust of the American people," Trump said. "But I won't. I will fight for them with truth." Press scrambled. Phones flashed. Twitter erupted. It happened in the blink of an eye. The light was no longer on the bill. It was on a single man, John Thune. And now, with no place to hide, he sat motionless in his seat as the room looked on in shocked silence. Offstage, aides huddled anxiously, attempting to contain the storm brewing. But Trump? He was serene, unflappable. The brown folder in his hand was not improp. Instead, it was reality, and he was soon to read from it aloud. Flipping open the folder, Trump began, email from March 8th, 2:14 a.m. Then he looked up. John Thune writes, "We'll use the parliamentarian excuse. It'll delay the bill long enough to gut the Medicaid funding." The room gasped. A woman in the crowd covered her mouth in shock. In a quiet house miles distant, A mother watching with her ill child started to sob. For her, this wasn't politics. It was personal. Thune rose slowly. Mr. President, this is a misunder... Trump turned to confront him. Don't lie to the American people, John. The crowd erupted. Some applauded, others cried. And Thune, he didn't utter another word. He just walked off the stage. But the cameras kept rolling. And the viewers at home, they never forgot. That moment became larger than one man's betrayal. It was about something more profound. How President Trump stayed strong when so many others caved to pressure. And while Thune fell into the background, a fire had been lit. Within an hour, all the big news networks were on fire. Breaking, Trump destroys Thune in scathing live takedown leaked emails. Confirmed GOP, collusion with Democrats to kill Medicaid bill. By morning, the video had gone viral. More than 48 million views. Trump was meanwhile back in the White House, standing by the window with his son Barron, silently observing as the headlines unfold. I didn't want it to be him, he whispered. But the country comes first. Within the Senate corridors, pandemonium reigned. Some Republican senators demanded that Thune resign forthwith. Others steered clear of the press altogether. On the Democratic side, alarm was spreading. Text messages and emails were being wiped. One aide was already gone by morning. But beyond Washington, in hospitals, homes, and small towns throughout the country, places where Medicaid was not merely a policy but a lifeline, something started to change. He's fighting for us, wept a grandmother in Georgia. They tried to cheat him, and he still didn't quit. President Trump, refusing to back down, rallied his troops and said, let's clean house. That betrayal, as it turned out, had unleashed something much bigger than anyone imagined, a movement. Just as the country was catching its breath, another shockwave hit. A whistleblower stepped forward. An anonymous Republican staffer. What they released was an audio tape recorded just 2 days before Trump's live speech. On it, John Thune's voice was crystal clear. Trump's bill dies with the parliamentarian. Let him rant. He doesn't know we're pulling strings from both sides. Click. The internet broke. They cried. Demonstrators showed up outside Thune's office. The hashtag #WeStandWithTrump hashtag started trending globally. Trump made a few words before the White House that morning. He appeared exhausted but firm. To every American who's ever felt unheard, this fight is for you. I will not stop until corruption is rooted out. And then he said something that caused the world to stand still. John Thune believed the swamp would shield him, but the truth is greater, and the American spirit is as well. Folks gathered from all over, lounge rooms, hospital rooms, church cellars, and many wept, not from sadness, but because someone was finally taking a stand for them, noisily, without hesitation. And that was only day one. In a small nursing home in Iowa, an elderly woman named Martha Pierce held her TV remote with shaking hands. Her voice was soft as she whispered, he's telling the truth. For months, Martha had been terrified her Medicaid coverage would vanish. She'd written letters, made calls, but no one in Washington seemed to care. Until now. Trump's voice echoed in her room and she cried. I voted for him, she said, and I was right. Martha's tale wasn't exceptional. Throughout the nation, fathers, veterans, single moms, all listened in and felt the same. They'd lost confidence in politics. But in this instance, they felt heard. Back in Washington, Thune's office closed the blinds. Outside, there were protesters. Some of them held signs that said, Trump fights for us. That night alone, Trump's team received over 90,000 emails. Some were about policy, sure, but most were heartfelt, emotional. One email read, I don't care what the media says. You're the first president who didn't sell us out. Back in Iowa, Martha folded her wrinkled hands in prayer. Protect him, Lord, she whispered. He's all we've got. By Tuesday morning, Trump's approval ratings were up 11 points, but something even stronger occurred. A man named Carlos Rivera, a factory worker from Michigan, put up a plain video from his daughter's hospital room. The unvarnished candor of it ran like wildfire across the internet. Carlos stood by the bedside of his young daughter, holding aloft a printed version of Trump's Medicaid bill, the bill they had worked so hard to thwart. My little girl has leukemia, he said, his eyes brimming with tears. They tried to keep this man from helping us, but he refused to give in. Carlos addressed the camera directly. John Thune doesn't know what it's like to beg a hospital for assistance, but Trump does. That's why they despise him, because he's fighting for people like me. In just a few hours, the video had amassed 30 million views. Even CNN couldn't remain silent about it. Anchors were overcome with emotion reporting on the news. America was not only seeing a political reckoning, it was a moral one. In the White House, Trump sat in silence watching the video, Barron sitting next to him. He said nothing, but his eyes, red and glassy, spoke volumes. In the Senate office of John Thune, the senator sat alone. No aides, no press, nothing but silence. In his hand, he had a white envelope with confidential written on it. It wasn't from the White House. It wasn't from any political strategist. It was from Ellie, a 10-year-old cancer survivor. On the inside was a drawing she had made. It depicted President Trump proudly standing in front of a hospital, his hand grasping Ellie's. Behind them was a dark figure marked the bad man. And yes, it was eerily identical to John Thune. The note stated, "Dear Mr. Thune, why did you try to stop the man who helped me get my medicine? That was mean. Please don't hurt him anymore." Thune let the letter fall. He'd been attacked politically before. Scandals, even threats. But nothing had cut him like that little naive question from a little girl who just wanted to remain alive. He looked at his reflection and didn't know the man in the mirror. He wasn't a leader. He was a coward who got caught. And outside his office, the nation was waking up. This was not merely outrage. It was something more. Hope from the embers of betrayal. At a few minutes past midnight, Trump assembled his inner circle in the Situation Room. The atmosphere was strained but intense, controlled. He put Ellie's letter down on the table. "This is not just about Thune anymore," Trump declared firmly. "It's about all the quiet traitors smiling in my face and then stabbing me in the back." Stephen Miller leaned forward. "What's the next step, Mr. President?" Trump didn't waste a moment. "We bring receipts." A full-scale audit was already in motion. Quiet, legal, devastating. Trump had given the go-ahead to sift through every aspect of Thune's campaign funds, travel records, and clandestine backdoor deals. By dawn, the results would do the talking. And Trump, he wouldn't scream, he wouldn't rant, he would just reveal, openly, powerfully, and unmistakably. This was not revenge, this was justice. The morning stillness at 6:03 a.m. was shattered by headlines. Breaking $2.3 million in hidden PAC transfers tied to Senator John Thune. Thune audit verifies connections to lobbyists who fought Trump's healthcare bill. The news exploded like a bomb. Anchors stuttered over words. Thune's office would not comment. Live on television, one Republican senator from Thune's own inner circle quit on the air. "I will not stand by a traitor," he declared. The documents were authentic, verified, and Thune's name was everywhere on them. One of the recipients? A shadowy group that had publicly endorsed Trump's bill while secretly working to kill it. The American people were nauseated, but not surprised. Later that day, President Trump took the podium at a press conference. "I didn't come to Washington to make friends in the swamp," he said. "I came to fight for you. And when someone betrays that trust, I expose them." Responding to whether he would call for Thune's expulsion from Senate leadership, Trump hesitated and spoke just 5 words. "The people will handle that." The crowd erupted. Within Thune's office, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Staffers were clearing out their desks. One distraught young intern, tears streaming down her face, whispered, "I had no idea it was this bad." Thune himself remained silent. No apologies, no statements, just relentless pacing within his personal residence, watching Trump's demolition repeatedly on television. "This wasn't supposed to go this far," he grumbled to himself. But the reality had penetrated too far, and now it was spilling out for everyone to witness. Meanwhile, throughout America, folks weren't simply angry. Folks were inflamed with a sense of purpose. Trump rallies grew threefold overnight. Truckers put up homemade signs on their rigs that read, "Trump fights for the forgotten." In diners in small towns all over the nation, veterans of old lifted their coffee cups and nodded. "He did it again," said one. "Challenged the powerful and succeeded." Barron took his father to the White House and showed him a clip from a morning program. It was Ellie, the little girl who had written the hand-drawn letter. She held up her drawing once more, beaming. "President Trump sent the bad man away," she declared. Trump smiled softly. "That's all I needed to know." Far off, in a corner of South Dakota, John Thune stared out a window. The curtain had come down, and not only because of Trump. The people had brought it down themselves. That Sunday morning, in a small Tennessee church, Pastor Elijah stood before the congregation. His sermons usually dwelled on Scripture. Today, however, his voice shook with something deeper, something personal. He held up photocopies of the audit papers. "This," he said, "is what betrayal looks like." Then he held up a picture, President Trump with Ellie's letter. "And this is what courage looks like." Mothers brushed away tears. Veterans stood at attention. And then the entire church rang out with one raw, honest truth. "He's not perfect, but he fights for us." People weren't crying because Trump had been hurt. They were crying because, for the first time, someone in power was hurting for them, and they felt that pain. They shared it. Pastor Elijah ended his sermon with a sentence that couldn't be twisted, not even by the media. John Thune sold out. Donald Trump stood up. And when this storm passes, we'll remember who shielded the people and who left them in the rain. By late afternoon, the chinks in the Senate were beginning to open up. 3 Republican senators, once members of Thune's inside circle, issued public statements, one after the other. I cannot defend deception. I resign from my committee roles effective immediately. The people trusted us. We failed them. I stand with the president. Trump was right. Thune betrayed us all. Capitol Hill went into freefall. Primary news channels scrambled to spin the story, but it came too late. The American people were fed up waiting for media approval to believe what they could see for themselves. Trump remained quiet in the meantime. And that silence, it spoke volumes. He didn't gloat. He didn't spike the football. He just watched, silently, as the swamp drained itself. His press secretary provided only a brief update. President Trump is concentrated on what comes first, giving results to the American people. But off the radar, something big was well underway. Trump had issued a new order to his staff. Write up a new version of the big, beautiful bill. This time, we pass it clean. And let's call it after the children it will rescue. At 9:47 p.m., President Trump got a call that would turn everything around. It was Carlos Rivera, the Michigan factory worker whose daughter was battling cancer. The call was not on the agenda. It was on a special staff-monitored phone line. Something about the timing felt just right. Trump answered. "Mr. President," said Carlos, voice trembling, "you don't know me, but my daughter's numbers were better today. We think she's going to make it." There was a pause so long, then Carlos said, "She told me when she grows up, she wants to be as strong as you." Trump's eyes went toward the window. His voice was low. "Tell her, I told her she already is." Carlos didn't request money. Carlos didn't request assistance. He just said, "Thank you for not forgetting us." That evening, sitting alone in the Oval Office, Trump cradled Ellie's drawing in his hand. Carlos's words reverberated in his brain. "Thank you for not forgetting about us." And in that still moment, Trump swore to himself silently he'd never give up, not for office, but for them. A 9-year-old boy named Liam sat in a hospital room having his blood taken in rural Alabama. Born with a rare immune disorder, Liam's parents had submitted more than 40 appeals for Medicaid funding, and all of them had been rejected. Until a few weeks ago, when Trump's people jumped in and flipped everything on its head. Liam did not know anything about politics, but he knew this: that guy on television had saved his life. He dug into his mom's purse, grabbed a crayon and a piece of paper, and began to draw. He drew a large orange house marked White House, a small boy in a cape, and next to him, President Trump thumbing up. In wobbly script at the bottom, Liam wrote, "Thank you for saving me. I believe in you." That was all Liam wrote. His mom sent the drawing to the White House. The letter never saw the news, but it appeared on President Trump's desk. And when he saw it, he didn't utter a word. He clutched it to his chest. And for the first time that day, he cried. Later that afternoon, President Trump appeared in the Senate chamber unannounced. He wasn't on the calendar. No press, no welcome, just him, cradling a thick binder in his arms. On the cover, Thune's Trail. Within, a mountain of documented facts, financial reports, secret memos, hard facts. He handed one to the Senate clerk, another to the C-SPAN camera crew that was live broadcasting. Gasps ring out in the room. Trump takes a stand. "I promised the American people I'd drain the swamp," he started. "But I never anticipated the rot would be sitting next to me, in my own party." He did not yell. He did not name call. He simply opened up the binder and began reading. Page after page, he methodically went through the lies John Thune had written, the money he had spent, the contracts he had signed, while claiming to be for Trump's bill. "You didn't betray me," Trump told the camera. "You betrayed them, the parents, the sick, the veterans, the farmers." Then, clutching Liam's letter aloft for all the country to behold, he said, "This is who I fight for." The gallery erupted into deafening applause. A senator rose, then another, then another. Within seconds, dozens of them were standing. But John Thune wasn't in attendance. He had already departed, making a quick exit from the Capitol and booking into a low-key Virginia hotel. He shaved, changed his number, instructed his assistant not to call him. But the truth never hides. That evening, all the major networks broadcast Trump's complete speech. The binder contents were made public. Independent reporters started investigating. By 9:00 p.m., John Thune was trending worldwide. Not with pride, but with shame. Outside his hotel, one man stood, grasping for an American flag and a cardboard sign. "We trusted you. You sold us out." Thune gazed down from the window and collapsed into a chair. He was no longer a leader. He was a warning. At the White House, Trump strolled down the halls in silence. Liam's letter clutched in one hand. Carlos Rivera's voicemail stuck in his head. Ellie's drawing now hanging on his desk. This battle was not about headlines anymore. It was about hearts. And somehow, in spite of it all, Trump had regained them. Not in outrage or retaliation, but in truth. The White House mailroom was filled to the brim by dawn. Thousands of letters had arrived, crayon artwork, wobbly handwriting, honorary medals, folded flags. One of the letters was from a mother who had just lost her job. It said, "Mr. President, I finally feel seen. Thank you for fighting the ones who forgot us." Trump didn't merely scan them. He sat silently, page after page, tears streaming in his eyes. He instructed his aides to display them up, down the hallway to the Oval Office, not as ornament, as reminder. A woman from Kansas, age 72, wrote, "My husband did 2 tours. When he died, I was ignored. Until now, you gave my voice back." Between the envelopes was a small box. Inside, a dog tag worn thin with age, a Vietnam vet's. The note had said, "Finish the job, Mr. President. We believe in you." Trump clutched it tight, murmured, "I will," and exited, ready to move on. Precisely at 8 p.m., President Trump emerged from behind the podium to deliver an impromptu emergency speech. No one knew what to anticipate. The media speculated. The analysts fretted, but they did not anticipate this. More than 94 million Americans tuned in, highest viewership since election night. Trump addressed the camera. "I didn't come here to be liked. I came to serve you," he went on, voice steady and confident. "This week I revealed something ugly, not to hurt people, but to heal a broken system." Then he raised up a brand new document. "This is the restored version of the big beautiful bill." Gasps erupted across living rooms across the country. "We've taken away the hands of the corrupt," Trump declared. "Every word in this bill now belongs to the people, not the special interests, not the backroom politicians." And he concluded with this: "To John Thune, you attempted to silence the sick, the poor, the forgotten. But I spoke up, and now America is speaking up with me." Across the nation, people stood on their feet. They applauded in living rooms. They cried on porches. They hugged in shelters and hospital wards. This wasn't just a political speech. It was a promise. In dusty town halls, in basement churches, in city clinics, people gathered around TVs and phones and radios. A young nurse in Pennsylvania burst into tears and hugged her shift partner. "He did it," she said. "He really did it. He fixed it." A retired coal miner wiped his eyes and turned to his grandson. "That man just ensured you'll live a life better than I did." In the Capitol, lawmakers sat paralyzed. Some wept. Others slipped out of the chamber in silence, unable to confront what they had neglected for too long. But the people, they erupted. The forgotten, the dismissed, the poor, the sick, the silenced. They felt powerful once again, not because of politics, but because someone finally stood up for them when it counted most. That evening, Trump returned to the Oval Office and gazed down at the dog tag again. "For the people," he had said. Outside the White House, candles burned. A subdued crowd had assembled, and as one, they chanted a single thing: "Thank you, Mr. President." A teacher in a public middle school in Ohio stopped her lesson in history. She switched on the projector and showed a clip of Trump's emergency speech. The children were quiet. They had never seen a president like this one before. The pen shook a bit in his hand as he signed the bill. The room erupted into cheers. Reporters who had once questioned him stood and applauded, alongside single mothers and veterans. Not because they'd changed sides, but because truth had transformed them. And when President Trump stood up, he didn't brag. He just spread his arms, smiled softly, and breathed, "For you, always for you." The crowd erupted, but the people in the front row, the children, the workers from the factory, the forgotten ones, knew the true truth. They weren't there to see history happen. They were the reason it occurred. That night, as the sun set low behind the White House, President Trump returned to the Oval Office. On his desk was a small golden envelope. No return address. There was a note inside. 6 words in exquisite cursive. "You kept your promise. Thank you." It was signed Amy Jensen, a mother who 6 years before had wept in a town hall, pleading for assistance to protect her disabled son. Trump had remembered her, and now, thanks to the new bill to expand Medicaid, her son finally had complete coverage. Trump shut his eyes and clutched the letter to his chest. He didn't need headlines. He didn't need accolades or medals. Moments such as these were enough. Outside White House gates, thousands of people had come, candles in all their hands, not to protest, not to rage. In unity, across all America, Americans stopped. They recalled the betrayal, the anguish, but most of all, they felt the healing. And it had begun with one choice, one voice, one president. That evening, President Trump came on television one final time. No fancy desk, no red tie, just a plain chair by the White House fireplace. On the table beside him, Ellie's drawing, Liam's letter, Amy's note. "My fellow Americans," he said quietly, "we just survived a tough chapter. One where someone attempted to take your hope and conceal it behind politics." He took Ellie's drawing and examined it. Hope can't be kept hidden, not when people stand together. He never mentioned Thune's name. He didn't have to, because this tale no longer had anything to do with betrayal. It had to do with redemption, with standing up when others sit down, with honoring your word when it would be easier to walk away. Then Trump turned to the camera and declared, "To the forgotten men, women, and children of this nation, I will never forget you." And for one entire minute, he didn't say another word. That silence, it spoke more loudly than any words. For the first time, America was heard. 3 days passed, and Ellie, Carlos, Liam, and dozens of families came to the recently renamed People's Health Pavilion, a center constructed through funding from the new legislation. On the wall, in large bronze letters, it read, "This building stands because truth stood tall." Trump walked the halls not as a politician, but as a servant. He shook hands. He knelt to hug children. He smiled for photos, not for votes, but for memories. One child whispered, "You're my hero." Trump smiled back, "You're mine." As he stood on the pavilion steps, the crowd chanted, "USA, USA, USA." This wasn't about politics anymore. This was about a people who had been silenced, finding their voice again, and the man who assisted them in discovering it. At other times in the stillness after the storm, we're reminded of what matters most. Not the headlines or the din, but the quiet resolve of a promise kept, a hand extended, a voice that refuses to be silent when others walk away. We all have moments where trust is broken, where hope seems too far to grasp, and yet someone shows up, not without fault, but in integrity. And that makes all the difference. Perhaps that's the true heart of it. Not dramatic acts, but the quiet strength to stand up for one another. To recall that even in a world that tends to forget, kindness does make a difference. And perhaps tonight, as the tale settles in your heart, you'll hold that truth a little nearer. If this tale touched your heart, if you felt the hurt, the truth, the forgiveness, this is your time to stand with it. Share this video with the world to demonstrate we still have faith in courage. Subscribe to keep stories like this alive. Comment below, what moment touched your heart? Was it Ellie, Carlos, Liam? Forward this to someone who needs hope today, because together we make truth louder than betrayal. Thanks for watching, and God bless America.